Hey everybody, welcome to Philosophy for Flourishing. It's a show where we explore principles and practices that you can use to make your life great. I'm John Hersey. Thanks so much for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I think is super important to flourishing. We're living through some really crazy times, of course, and we're going through sort of a remote work revolution. Uh, Hundreds of thousands of people, at least in the US alone, are working from home, and a lot of them have never done it before. I've been doing it for about 4 years now, and I'm definitely no expert at it, but I've learned a lot in that time. And I think that some of the things I've learned, especially in the last, year, I'd say the end of 2019 is when I sort of hit the nail on the head from my own home environment and started to really groove and get more done and just feel better and more productive and uh, and that's had all sorts of great cascading benefits. That's when I think I sort of hit my stride with my homework environment design. So I want to talk about reducing friction because I think that's the biggest thing that we run into. And when I've had all sorts of homework environments. My current one is the best I've ever had. It's great. It's a small room. There's hardly anything in it but a desk, a calendar, and some other things that I want to talk about, what they are and why I have them. But I've also had some horrible ones. My first apartment, I had picture this, just a desk pushed against the wall in the corner, guitars next to me on one side, guitar amp in the other, recording gear, books, mail, just all sorts of stuff. Everything that I needed, both for work, for classes I was taking at the time, and then just for my hobbies. It was all just sort of mashed in together, and that created some problems. So late last year, I was reading James Clear's Atomic Habits, an amazing, amazing book. I highly recommend it. Um, and I was struck when I came across his description of his own sort of plight with his work from home environment because it resonated so deeply with mine. He talked about when he had first started working from home, he was working from his kitchen table, from his couch, just from wherever. He didn't really have any sort of work environment. And he would work late into the evening because there was no delineation between work and everything else you do at home. And that's a common problem. And, as I've already indicated, I ran into that myself. And a lot of us, there's seemingly little that we can do to avoid that because, facts are facts. We live where we live and we have the environment that we have. But his thinking on this definitely got me started and shined a light on some things that I think we can all think about and do to some extent. So what he talked about is the fact that when you're trying to build good habits, one of the things you depend heavily on is the environment. Environments are loaded with all sorts of cues, and we tend to offload as much as we can to our subconscious. There's an amazing essay on this topic by Ayn Rand in Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology, and she talks about something called the crow epistemology. In essence, we have a limited bandwidth at the level of conscious awareness, and so we do need to push a lot of it into the subconscious. And when we do so, our behavior to a large extent becomes based on our environment because our environment is loaded with cues that cause our behavior. So just quick example, yesterday I went for a run, and when I got home, I saw my mailbox. I went to the mailbox, opened it to see if we had mail. But I had already checked the mail earlier in the day, so I didn't need to check the mail again. I just did it because the cue was there, and the cue just caused the habit. It's just automated. So that's just a small example from outside the home of the sort of thing that we do inside the home all the time. And I think one of the biggest cues for most of us sort of a mishmash of many different types of cues are our cell phones. I absolutely love cell phones. I love technology. I definitely don't want to vilify technology companies at all. But the fact is that our phones are loaded with various cues, causing us to want to start all sorts of different behaviors. So the lesson from this ultimately is that to whatever extent we can control the cues in our environment, we can largely control our behavior and and really reduce a lot of friction. So even when we moved into this house, for instance, I had an office on the first floor, and we had two sort of extra rooms in the house, and my wife decided, okay, I'm going to have one, and I decided I'll have the other. And so I had all of my stuff. It was sort of like my man cave, if you will. My guitars, we have a piano in there, speakers, there's a couch, and there's my desk and some books and this and that. And it was the same thing that Clear described. I was just there was no delineation between work and play. I'd be sitting there at my desk working, and I look to my left, and there's a sweet Telecaster just sort of begging to be played and sort of tugging at my subconscious. And I would think, walking into the room, I'd be trying to get into my workday, and I'd be thinking, wow, there's that song I want to perfect, and there's that thing I want to learn, there's that music project that I want to record. So there was just a mishmash of different cues in my environment. And I realized that when I read in particular one phrase from the book, one space, one use. Now, for a lot of us, that's using a single space per use is just not possible. But to whatever extent it is, it's extremely helpful. So let me just share how I applied that and how things have sort of progressed for me. So realizing that I had to divide my work life and my personal life a bit more, I decided to take over the room that my wife had claimed for myself as well, greedy me, and turn that into my home office. And it was great. So things have changed a little bit, but this is how it was. Desk and under a skylight, so nice natural light, helpful for keeping me alert and awake. But importantly, not a window that I can just sort of stare out and get distracted by whatever's going on my street. On one side of me, the Oxford English Dictionary, a friend of mine very generously gifted to me, which is just an amazing resource. I'm a writer and editor, and it's not only great for looking things up, but really for learning the etymology of words. And it was something that I just wasn't using in my old office, if not really an office, but my everything room, because it was on a shelf. It was away, and so I hadn't really integrated it into my workflow very much. So moving to the new office, it gave me the opportunity to just set that right next to me. And anytime I had a question, it was just an obvious cue. I've got a question about a word. What does this word really mean? What's the etymology come from? Now I've got my tool right there, and I can utilize it. Also found a great calendar. I know most of us at this point rely on digital calendars, and I do largely as well. But having a physical, ever-present reminder of when I am in my life is really helpful. I found one that in the bottom corner it says how many days of the year are left and how many days have elapsed, which I wasn't really looking for when I was looking for a calendar, but I've come to love it, and now I will always seek out calendars that have that, because a lot of goals that we have to set throughout the year are, very ambitious and take a lot of time. And if an entire quarter of the year goes by and we haven't really made progress on that, or I'm 300 and something days into the year, and I've not really made enough progress on this thing, it's just a helpful reminder to have. Uh, I also have some sticky notes in my office with just some standing orders, things that I want to remember to do on a regular basis, things that help me. And we've talked about standing orders, I think, and we'll talk about them more in another episode if you guys are interested. So these are cues. I've sort of built an environment with the right mix of cues that don't trigger my brain to go off on some tangent, off on some other subject while I'm trying to work. And meanwhile, my music space is now just my music space. And so when I'm in the zone there, I can just completely concentrate on that and flow. So perhaps you don't live somewhere where you can have a dedicated environment for each activity, but I think you can still largely control some of the cues. Or my experience has been that even in my mixed environment spaces, I've been able to control what cues are around me. I don't have to have a Telecaster sitting right next to me. I can have my calendar right in front of me instead of a piece of art or a poster or something. So the more that you can get rid of some of these cues, the more friction you can get rid of as well, and really start to just jam at work and flow on a more regular basis. So another piece of this is I'm a dog lover. I hope some of you are as well. I've got 2 dogs. There's one actually sleeping next to me right now. And this is an example of what I want to talk about because a lot of environments, like I've said, I've had a lot of different office environments, and some of them were, on the surface at least conducive to me, but they weren't to my dogs. And some people have kids. I don't have kids, but there are a lot of different variables that you have to be thinking about when you're thinking about reducing friction in your environment. For me, one was, a lot of times I'm home alone with my dogs, and if they hear somebody out on the street, a UPS guy pulls up with a package or something, they're going to go crazy. But here I'm on the second floor. It's quiet. I actually got a air purifier, and I just, especially when I'm doing this podcast, I run that downstairs and I actually turn on some music, and it's just enough ambient noise that it sort of blocks everything out, and they're able to come up here and just relax and not go nuts. So that's been hugely helpful. Also disconnected my doorbell. Who needs doorbells anymore? But thinking about not just what your environment requires for you to be top notch, but also what is conducive to your family and the other people in your environment. It's really helpful. So short show today. I just wanted to share some ideas, and hopefully some of this is helpful. Some of it may be new. I highly recommend checking out James Clear's Atomic Habits. In addition to talking about environments, he's got a whole bunch of other just amazing tips. I'm not going to talk about the things like ergonomics and comfort. I think a lot of other people are better experts at that than I am. In fact, I'm looking around, and I've got an IKEA chair that I've wanted to replace for some time. And I've worked in offices before where they had nicer chairs and stuff, but I've not really done my homework and figured out what a good replacement is. So if you guys have thoughts on that, I'd love to hear them. Any other thoughts on getting a lot done while working from home? Oh, one other thing I wanted to say was when I started with this delineation, when I made the effort to really delineate between work environment and just fun environment, one of the things that happened was I had a way better ability to turn off work when it was time to turn off work. And so not only has it made me more productive, but it's also enabled me to enjoy my personal life more, and get some of that back. My wife, she would accuse me of being a workaholic probably, and it's way easier to be a workaholic if everything happens in the same place, because you never turn that off. Now I can literally walk out and shut the door And again, I know not everybody can do that, but to the extent that you can, it's extremely helpful. And to the extent you can control some of the cues in your environment, that's extremely helpful as well. So please, I invite you to share your expertise on this. You can email me at john@objectivestandard.org, or you can just comment on the, wherever you're watching this. That's helpful, because then everybody else benefits from your wisdom too. So thanks for joining today. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and tune again next week. We'll see you soon.